Good afternoon. Welcome to the third UNL Bureau of Business Research webinar of the 2024 series. Today's presentation is sponsored by the UNL Bureau of Business Research within the Department of Economics at the College of Business here at UNL. My name is Mitchel, and I serve as a project director at the Bureau of Business Research. Today we are going to hear from 5 Bureau of Business Research scholars who have been working with us this year. As I'll discuss in more detail in a moment, the BBR Scholars Program provides undergraduate students with an opportunity to participate in research activities here at the university. The research to be presented today has recently been presented at the UNL Undergraduate Research Days. The students have worked hard all year, receiving training in research methods and developing research topics for presentation. The 5 presentations are diverse and provide a solid example of the types of research that students conduct here at the BBR. Before we begin the presentations, I would like to point out several features of the webinar. First, one feature of the webinar is a chat window where participants can chat with one another as they feel free. We also have a Q&A window where participants can type in questions for myself or the BBR scholars at any time during today's presentation. I'll let the scholars answer those questions as they come up, or if you have a question at the end of the seminar or webinar, I will answer those for you at the end. Just to begin, before we get to the presentations, I just wanted to give a brief rundown of the BBR Scholars Program. So the program was established in 2018, so it's been around for 6 or 7 years now. The program provides undergraduate students with a research opportunity so they can participate in meaningful economic research here during their time at the university. Scholars may work on Bureau-sponsored projects. We have many projects where outside agencies, organizations, nonprofits ask us to conduct work on their behalf. And students typically or very often help out on these projects. Some students also come into the BBR Scholars Program with their own research questions, and we allow them to pursue those research questions and provide guidance along the way. The last bullet point, as I mentioned, we provide mentoring. The staff and faculty here at the BBR, as well as other faculty in the economics department, provide mentoring opportunities to the students. We currently have 9 BBR scholars in the program. We typically carry anywhere from like 6 to 15 over the years. We are currently at 9. We have a few graduating. Some of the presentations today some of the presenters today, I think maybe actually all of them are graduating here soon. So we'll have a new group of BBR scholars next fall. So we have right now 31 alumni, I believe. The students who have worked with the BBR have gone on to work in industry, various government agencies, and several have gone on to graduate school. So in addition to providing opportunities to engage in research with staff or faculty at the BBR, we also have a seminar series to provide additional training to the BBR scholars. So some of the topics that we cover during these seminars include using the R programming language, so the software that's typically used for data analysis, data visualization, and we do our best to get students at least introduced to R, and some actually become quite proficient during their time with the BBR. In addition, in a lot of cases, it supplements their coursework, the things they learn during their coursework. We also focus on data analysis, specifically regression techniques. A lot of the analyses you'll see today that the undergraduate research scholars present utilize regression techniques that they, again, either some of it they've learned through the seminar series. A lot of it is probably more the result of their coursework during their time here at the College of Business. And of course, we focus on the presentation of results. As I mentioned, the undergraduate research days just wrapped up 2 days ago, and the 5 presentations you saw today, or that you'll see today, were presented 2 days ago at the undergraduate research fair. With that, we will go ahead and get started with the presentations. First up is Juliana Quattrocchi, who examined public transportation access here in the United States.
My name is Janana Quattrocchi. I looked at mobility's impact on healthcare work arrangements with evidence from the late night bus expansion. We're particularly interested in the healthcare industry because in the 4 years since the pandemic, largely the medical industry's employment has recovered, but for nursing homes, they remain around 10% below pre-pandemic staffing levels. This has implications for the quality of care patients are receiving in terms of higher rates of neglect-related injuries and higher mortality rates when there's inadequate staffing at these nursing homes. To be able to answer this question, we utilize a difference in differences methodology to compare facilities that had expanded mobility, which has the potential to increase contractors who are temporary workers and typically work for a span of a couple of months at these facilities, ability to access these late night shifts. In order to develop a comparison group, we look at runner-up bus routes that did not receive this nighttime bus mobility expansion. Before this shift in June of 2021, routes generally ended service around 11 or 12:30, but for these selected routes, these 36 that were expanded, service now ended at 2 in the morning. So using press releases, we developed a list of 36 routes that were very close to being expanded based on items that are mentioned in those press releases, but weren't quite expanded due to limitations and resources as a comparison group to see what happened to the nursing home facilities in the absence of an expansion of nursing home mobility. So this map in the middle with the blue and the red displays the comparison routes and the routes where there was actually expanded service. Those blue routes are the comparison routes, the runner-up routes, and then the red routes shown are the routes where there was expanded service. The image below that with the red and blue dots shows these nursing homes in the red where there was expanded service and the blue dots where there was runner-up routes. So those are the nursing home facilities that we'll use to understand what would have happened in the absence of this change. Overall, consistent with the literature, we do not find any result in aggregate employment. However, we do find for workers who are exposed to night shift occupations where there's generally night shifts involved, so like nurse practitioners and nurses, there's a shift in terms of an increase in contracted share of work hours using payroll data reported to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. We see a 1.7 to 2 in the share of hours worked by contractors for facilities lying along the expansion. And for these night shift workers, we also see an increase of about 1.5 contract workers in terms of payroll headcount. As we would expect, we don't see any impact on workers that are only working during the day shift because they're not being exposed to this expanded mobility. This has implications for localities and for the healthcare industry as they look towards how to attract more workers with various incentives, including mobility, particularly as there's impending federal regulations that the majority of nursing homes would not be able to meet with their current staffing requirements.
Okay, thank you very much, Juliana. Next up is Janana Khattak, who examined tax increment financing here in the state of Nebraska.
Thank you so much. Tax increment financing is a popularly used policy tool. The way that it works is that a property that is labeled as blighted will then be given a state subsidy, and that loan is used to redevelop the area, after which the difference in the property value and the taxes, that difference will then be paid back to pay off that loan. The literature indicates that on average, it can take about 10 years to pay back that loan, which means that TIF is a very advantageous policy tool, though of course there's many factors that go into that year range. But since 1978, Nebraska has been adopting thousands of TIF projects. And in 2022, Omaha approved $160 million worth of TIF loans. However, there's also many criticisms to TIF, not only the opportunity costs of this policy program and the potential for mismanagement of funds, but some of the literature shows that TIF projects can be more impactful for community growth and development in larger and more historic cities and states. And then also sometimes it can be the case that when TIF districts are established, it relocates the existing business interactions, making it there are market inefficiencies that can be spurred from that. So given this, and given that also Omaha, Nebraska is only increasing TIF projects, especially next year with the First National Bank of Omaha project going on and other projects, it is especially imperative that we look into whether or not these projects are effective and efficient. And so in this research, in order to investigate that, I looked at TIF projects implemented between the years 2010 and 2016. And then I compared them to properties that did not receive TIF. Specifically, they were divided up by their neighborhoods. There are, of course, many variables that impact a property value, but by comparing by similar neighborhoods, that can help to control for those localized influences. And then I also made sure that after looking for projects that were afforded $250,000 or more, those randomized projects were compared through a difference in difference regression, through which we found assuringly that projects that did receive TIF funding had an average of over $3 million of annual property growth more than properties that did not receive TIF funding, which is very reassuring. But it should be noted that the Exarban neighborhood in particular is probably pushing up that figure. There's a lot of factors into why certain neighborhoods will have more attention than not. That wasn't exactly what I looked into for this particular research. But another interesting finding was that for every dollar invested, there was an additional over 20 cents in annual property growth value, which is again reassuring. But it should be noted that this research is limited because I have a low number of observations, just 40, and further research should look into incorporating further variables for more precise research.
Okay, thank you very much, Janana. Next up is Isha Kishore, who examined minority voter turnout here in the United States.
Hi, everybody. My name is Isha Kishore, and my research looked at voter engagement nonprofit impact on the minority voter turnout. Using data from the Urban Institute's National Center of Charitable Statistics, we were able to determine the number of R40 registered nonprofits per state in 2018 and 2022. R40 is an IRS activity code designated to nonprofits that encourage participation in the political process amongst citizens and provide and promote resources to increase voter engagement and registration. Historically, minority communities have a lower participation rate in the political process in comparison to their white counterparts. My research assessed whether these R40 registered nonprofits actually had an impact on the minority voter turnout and effectively engaged with minority voters. As you can see in the map in the lower left corner, Texas, New York State, and California had the largest increase in voter registration nonprofits per state between 2018 and 2022. After conducting a multiple linear regression analysis, we found that voter engagement nonprofits had a statistically insignificant relationship with the minority voter turnout. Our primary limitation was the relatively small sample size that we had. And a secondary limitation was the small period of time that passed between the 2018 and the 2022 biennial elections, spanning only 4 years. We did see that an increase in the percentage of the population with a bachelor's degree or higher corresponded to an increase in the minority voter turnout. Furthermore, we did see that social capital actually had a negative relationship with the minority voter turnout. This could be because individuals who feel satisfied and connected with their communities may not be as inclined to participate in the political process. Further research does need to be conducted to find a relationship between these two variables. In the future, I would look at the presidential election years because they tend to have a higher participation rate in comparison to biennial election years. Furthermore, I would assess more control variables such as the percentage of urban residents within a state or partisanship scores or partisanship affiliation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Isha. Next up is Reese Munson, who examined the factors that explain why grants go to women-owned businesses here in the United States.
Hello. So I was looking at the correlation between different innovation factors and small business innovation research awards granted to women-owned businesses. Innovation is defined as like increasing productivity, profits, and income I pulled the data from Stats America Innovation Intelligence, and that is looking at both the current innovation levels and the potential for innovation. There's numerous factors that go into that, about 100. That includes things that measure human capital and knowledge creation, such as educational attainment, patent diffusion, and STEM education and opportunities. It looks at different business dynamics, which is mostly measuring different business births, expansion, deaths, contractions, and business profile is the other large input group. And that is going to be measured by different venture capital measures, such as dollar and number of deals, foreign direct investment, proprietorship, industry performance and diversity, amongst many other things. The Small Business Innovation Research Grants are administered through the Small Business Administration and funded by 11 different federal agencies. And those are just federal grants set aside for small American businesses to engage in federal research and development for the potential for commercialization. So when I was looking at it, I analyzed it based on two different output variables. First, I looked at the number of awards in a county that were awarded to women-owned businesses, which you can see in the map on the bottom left. And when I did that, I did not find any significance for the General Innovation Index, which is just the overall measure of all of those different input levels or input variables. But I did find that the number of colleges in a county was significant, and that a couple of the state level control variables that I identified were significant. Those include grants that the state has set aside for women-owned businesses, and if the state has any programs that are focused on developing women-owned businesses. The second output that I looked at was the proportion of awards in a county that were awarded to women-owned businesses. I did find here that overall innovation was significant. And then I also found that the third state level value that I looked at was significant, which was if the state has any departments focused on women-centered businesses. So going forward, I think that it would be advisable to invest more in those state level programs, departments, and grants for women-owned businesses to continue developing them, as the number of SBIR awards, or out of those, only 10% go to women-owned businesses. Further research, I would recommend looking into the Innovation Index, the specific variables that go into that, to see if there are any ones that stand out that have a larger impact than others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Reese. Finally, we have Jessica Chen, who examined various methods to categorize economic well-being in counties in the United States.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Herian. So I'm Jessica, and I looked at modeling economic well-being using various machine learning techniques. Kind of some motivation behind it is that machine learning techniques are a great way to help identify patterns in data sets, and we're always on the trip to identify key features affecting economic well-being across the country. From there, we then wanted to build a machine learning model to potentially evaluate a county's economic well-being category. So using the same data as Reese just explained, the innovation intelligence dataset has over 100 different features and variables that went into calculating innovation intelligence. And that dataset was essentially split up into 5 main categories of innovation intelligence, splitting between inputs and outputs, from human capital knowledge creation to business dynamics to business profile being the innovation intelligence inputs, and outputs being employment and productivity and economic well-being. So taking that economic well-being aside as the main index that we want to evaluate, we used a stepwise backward elimination process to identify top 10 most statistically significant features from the data set for measuring economic well-being. So taking the data set, we split up all the counties into top 25% economically well-being, highest index scores to the other 75% lower economic well-being. And then from there, using the logistic regression, and stepwise backward elimination, we identified 10 features from the other categories that affected economic well-being the most. One of them that was the most consistent throughout was graduate degree attainment. So no matter how many features I were to choose, if I were to choose one, it would have been the graduate degree attainment. It was always the most statistically significant. But along with there is the foreign direct investment, knowledge spillover, university knowledge spillover, along with average domestic GDP scores, essentially. And then from there, taking the 10 key features that were selected, we threw that into a logistic regression classification model. And from there, from the confusion matrix in the results section, you can see that the model itself was really, really good at predicting the true negative. So it was really good at predicting the bottom 75% economic well-being counties. However, it wasn't really that great at predicting the top 25%. The model had an accuracy rate of 78%, which it's not bad, but it's also not great. So putting that aside for a moment, we also decided to run a k-means classification on the data set. A k-means classification is where we throw all the data into the model and then tell it how many groups we want the model to split the data set into for visualization purposes. We split up the group into we split up the data set into 3 groups, and in the graph on the right, you can we use the 3 main variables of income inequality, average poverty rate, and residential internet connectivity. So taking the 2 maps for a quick comparison, there are consistency in what we would think of economic well-being. So under economic well-being, the darker blue purplish color to the green group under k-means classification, we see a slight correlation with the southern area and the tribal regions between the southwest area and the northern area kind of being grouped in the same color. And that group under k-means classification is your higher poverty rate, higher income inequality, and lower residential internet connectivity, which is what we would think of when we think of part of economic well-being. However, when we ran the k-means classification on various variables and other sets of features, one thing that was consistent and quite shocking was the fact that the central Midwest region was always grouped together with the East Coast Northeast region, which is something that we usually don't expect. And so some of the next steps that we could take with this is using machine learning techniques, I was able to identify some of these patterns and group some of the counties together. So it'd be really interesting if Stats America goes and collects more data in the next couple upcoming years to put it through the model again to see if counties changed between the bottom 75% to the top 25%. And if they did, we can go in and analyze potential initiatives and policies that they implemented and take that to see if it'll work with the k-means classification grouping, if it'll work for other counties. So from there, it's really interesting to potentially take the next step and identify the reasons of why, for example, central region and northeastern region are grouped together. There's a lot of more questions essentially this project has proposed. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. At this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions that might be out there for me or for any of the students. And in the meantime, I'd just like to thank all the students. As I mentioned, all 5 of the students that presented today are graduating, so I'd just like to thank them for their hard work and dedication over the years. Each of the students, most of the students that presented have been with us more than 1 year, so in some cases a few years. So they put in a lot of time and effort into not just these research projects that you all saw today, but also helping us out on the other projects we have going on here at the Bureau. So I'd just like to thank them for that. I'd also like to invite everyone to our next webinar on April 12th, where Dr. Thompson will be presenting some work that he has recently completed here at the Bureau. In not seeing any questions, I think we can go ahead and wrap things up. If you've not already done so, feel free to reach out to us on social media or subscribe to our newsletter. And we'd love to hear from you. Again, any questions about this presentation or anything else we have going on here at the Bureau. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and hope everyone has a good day.